Hey guys, welcome to this module of process management. In this module, we'll be talking about what is a process in detail. Let's get started. What is a process? Process is a sequential, step-by-step activity performed to achieve a desired goal. Which means, or in other words, a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. Or in other words, to elaborate a bit, a sequence of interdependent and linked procedure which at every stage consumes one or more resources to convert inputs into an outputs. These inputs then become an inputs for the next stage until a known goal or end result is reached. What does it mean? So every process has its own input and an output, and that output will become another input for another set of process. This sequence will go till the end until the desired goal is met. Let's see what is an IPO model. IPO model means input, process, output. In order to achieve any output, you need to have a process in place. And for the process, what is it needed? You need an input. So input, process, and output. This is a very simple model where you will be able to visualize this in every part of your organization, be it your project. So as I already said, for every process you need an input and it's going to give you an output, and that output becomes an input for another process. So look at this first process, it has an output and that becomes an input, and then again this output becomes an input for another process. When this sequence gets over, you get a final output. Process 1, process 2 and process 3. So process 1's output becomes an input for process 2. Process 2's output becomes an input for process 3, and the process 3's output becomes a final output. Now let's take an example of a loan application process. Now let's assume you are going to apply a loan, so you become a client. Your client request is a trigger for the entire process. Now, once the client request is done, what happens? There will be a collection agent who is going to come and collect the documents from you. Once that document is collected, there would be a process in place where to verify all of your documents to see whether it has any discrepancy or not. Once that documentation is verified, and if it is all okay, your loan is going to be approved. If not, it's going to be rejected. So this becomes process 1 and process 2 and process 3. What I meant is that your client request, the output of the client request process step becomes an input for a collect document process, which is your process 2. And the document collection, which is the output, the hard document itself, that becomes an input for a verification process. So at the end output of this particular loan application process, you will be able to see whether rejected or it is approved. Now what are the inputs and outputs is what we discussed now. So let's look at something called as an upstream, midstream and downstream as a concept. Okay, I would request you to visualize a stream which is flowing like this. Okay, so you have an upstream where a complete water stream is started coming from there, and it flows from the hill and moves towards the downside of the hill, right? So now you have an upstream at the top of the hill, and you have a midstream and a downstream. Now let's go a little deeper to understand how this is coming out. Now your process 1 becomes your upstream, process 2 becomes your midstream, process 3 becomes your downstream. Let's try to connect this concept for the loan application process. Your client request becomes your upstream process, and collect document becomes your midstream process, and verifying the document and approve, that becomes a downstream process. What does it mean? So for every process, for the output of a upstream process becomes an input for a midstream process, and output of the midstream process becomes an input for a downstream process. Let's take a quick recap. What is a process? Process is a step-by-step activity which is performed to achieve a desired goal. What is an IPO model? Stands for input, process, output. And what is an upstream and what is a downstream? So upstream is the first step of your process, and meaning the entire end-to-end process. Your downstream is the last process which actually gives the entire output to the client. Happy learnings. God bless you.